In the world of rock music, there are legends. Some shine like stars that last forever, and some burn out too quickly, leaving people wondering what could have been. One of those brightest stars was Jimi Hendrix, a guitar hero who changed music with his electric style, wild performances, and one-of-a-kind sound. Another band that changed rock music forever was Led Zeppelin, known for their loud guitars, powerful drums, and unforgettable songs. But what happens when one music legend listens to another? That's the story of what Jimi Hendrix thought about Led Zeppelin, and it might not be what you'd expect. A time before legends met. Let's go back to the late 1960s. The music world was booming with creativity. Rock was louder than ever, and bands were experimenting with sound, style, and stage performances. Jimi Hendrix, already a superstar after performances at places like Woodstock, was considered one of the greatest guitarists in the world. Meanwhile, Led Zeppelin was just getting started. In January of 1969, they released their first album, Led Zeppelin 1, and followed it up later that year with Led Zeppelin 2. These albums quickly gained attention for their heavy sound and hard-hitting tracks. Although Jimi Hendrix passed away in September of 1970 at just 27 years old, he had enough time to hear those first two albums, and he definitely had some thoughts. A guitarist listening to another guitarist. When Jimi Hendrix found out that Jimmy Page, a well-known session guitarist from London and a former member of the band The Yardbirds, had started a new band, he was curious. Jimmy Page had a solid reputation in the music world. He had played on countless records in the 60s and had impressed many with his skills. So when Led Zeppelin's debut album came out, Jimi Hendrix made sure to give it a listen. What he heard, however, didn't impress him much. The problem with the covers. As Jimi Hendrix listened to Led Zeppelin I, he noticed something right away. Many of the songs weren't original. He could tell that a number of them were either covers or strongly inspired by older American blues songs. But what really upset him was that Led Zeppelin didn't give credit to the original artists in many of these cases. Take the song Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. It had originally been performed by folk singer Joan Baez, and while Led Zeppelin gave it a new sound, it was not something they had written from scratch. Then there was You Shook Me, a blues classic by Muddy Waters, and I Can't Quit You Baby, which was written by the legendary blues writer Willie Dixon. One of the biggest problems Jimi Hendrix had was with the song Dazed and Confused. The band claimed it was their original, but it had clearly been written by folk singer Jake Holmes. Even Black Mountain Side was based on a traditional Irish folk tune. To Jimi Hendrix, it felt like the band was taking the hard work of older blues musicians, changing just a few parts, and calling it their own. He found that disrespectful. Not a fan of copycats. Because Jimi Hendrix had such a great ear for music, he could quickly tell when a song was copied or inspired by another. He had spent years playing, writing, and developing his own sound, so when he heard Led Zeppelin taking from others without giving proper credit, it rubbed him the wrong way. To make matters worse, he didn't think the band did a very good job with the covers either. He felt the blues had a deep soul and emotion to it, something that couldn't be recreated by just playing louder or faster. He believed Led Zeppelin's versions were lacking that real feeling. He also had some mixed feelings about Jimmy Page as a guitarist. While he thought Page had talent and could definitely play well, he felt Page hadn't brought anything truly new to the table at that point. In Hendrix's opinion, a great guitarist should create something fresh and original, not just copy the past. Respect from the other side. Even though Jimi Hendrix didn't think much of Led Zeppelin's early work, the feeling wasn't mutual. In fact, members of Led Zeppelin were huge fans of Hendrix. Jimmy Page later called Hendrix the greatest to ever do it. He admitted that he regretted never getting to meet him or see him perform live. Sadly, Hendrix died before the two guitar legends could ever talk music or play together. The band's singer, Robert Plant, and drummer, John Bonham, were also big fans. They especially loved Hendrix's version of the song Hey Joe. To them, Hendrix wasn't just another guitarist, he was in a league of his own. A rare jam session in New York. Even though Jimi Hendrix never met Jimmy Page, he did get a chance to hang out and jam with Robert Plant and John Bonham once. It happened in New York City, at a famous spot called Steve Paul's Scene. It was a cool nightclub where musicians would sometimes show up out of the blue and play with whoever was on stage. It was the kind of place where magic could happen without anyone planning it. One night, Robert Plant and John Bonham were there, and so was Jimi Hendrix. Also in the club were other famous musicians like Jeff Beck, Rod Stewart, and Buddy Miles. According to Robert Plant, Hendrix walked up to John Bonham and joked, saying, "You know what? You got a foot like a rabbit." What he meant was that Bonham had incredibly fast footwork on the bass drum. In fact, Hendrix was so impressed that he asked Bonham if he'd like to join his new group, the Band of Gypsies. That was a big deal. Hendrix didn't just play with anyone. But Bonham politely said no. He was committed to Led Zeppelin, and he didn't want to leave. That night in New York would end up being the only time Jimi Hendrix, Robert Plant, and John Bonham were ever together. No one knew it at the time, but it would be the first and last time they'd meet before Hendrix passed away. The day the music died. On the morning of September 18, 1970, the world lost Jimi Hendrix. He was only 27 years old. The music world was shocked. That same day, Jimmy Page and Robert Plant were doing an interview when someone told them the heartbreaking news. Both men were stunned. They had looked up to Hendrix, and even though he had never been a fan of their band, they still respected him deeply. They called it a tragedy and couldn't believe he was gone. The big question, was Hendrix right? So now we come to the big question. Was Jimi Hendrix right about Led Zeppelin? There's no doubt that Led Zeppelin borrowed heavily from blues and folk music. Some people think they were simply paying tribute to the musicians who came before them, while others believe they were trying to pass off old songs as new ones without giving credit. In later years, the band was actually sued several times for copyright issues and eventually gave credit to the original artists for some of their songs. But whether you think they were thieves or just inspired by the greats, there's one thing everyone can agree on. Both Jimi Hendrix and Led Zeppelin changed rock music forever. They helped shape a sound that inspired millions of fans and thousands of musicians. Even if Hendrix didn't like Led Zeppelin, and even if they never got to play together, their music continues to live on. What we can learn from this story. The story isn't just about one rock star not liking another band, it's also about honesty in music. Jimi Hendrix believed in giving credit where it was due. He worked hard to create original music and didn't want to see others copy and claim it as their own. At the same time, it shows that people can admire someone even if that person doesn't like them back. Led Zeppelin respected Hendrix for his talent and his impact, even though he was critical of their music. It's also a reminder of how short life can be. Hendrix was only 27, and yet he left behind a legacy that still influences music today. Final thoughts. In the end, what Jimi Hendrix said about Led Zeppelin might surprise some fans. He didn't think their music was original. He thought they took too much from older artists and didn't always give credit. He respected Jimmy Page's skills, but not his creativity at the time. Still, the story shows how complex music relationships can be. Legends don't always agree with each other, but that doesn't stop them from being legends. So what do you think? Was Jimi Hendrix right about Led Zeppelin? Did they copy too much? Or were they just doing what many musicians do, taking inspiration and turning it into something new?